Hello, good afternoon. You're welcome to today's webinar session. My name is Damilola Kadiri. I am a member of the West African Interest Group of the IABC, that's the International Association of Business Communicators, and I'll be your moderator today. As you're aware, the topic for today's webinar is social listening. Yeah. Thank you for joining today's session again. The topic for today's webinar is social listening and sentiment analysis, gauging public perception. And we have a very intelligent set of panelists who will be speaking to us today. Once again, thank you for joining us today and thank you for the gift of your time. I'm aware that we have a diverse set of audience. So please drop your name as well as your affiliation in the comment section. A few housekeeping rules. The meeting is being recorded. And while we go on and proceed with the session, you're welcome to drop your questions and the panelists will do well to address them as we go along. If you're new here, if you haven't joined the IABC sessions before, we have these sessions from time to time to keep ourselves informed about the business of communication and to also make sure that we are and to also make sure that we stay on the top of our game as we communicate for our businesses and respective audiences. The IABC was established in 1970, so it's in its 55th year. And if you're wondering why you should become a member of the IABC, you're able to build community, advance your career, and stay ahead of global trends. I see people already dropping comments about where they're joining us from. Please keep that coming. We're just talking about why you should become a member of the IABC. If you're looking to leverage tools for results, you want to stay sharp, you want to present your credentials and prove your expertise, this is a place to be. Once again, you're welcome to today's session. And here on the slides, you can see just some of our leads from the West Africa Interest Group. The West Africa Interest Group, I should have said earlier, is also a part of the IABC Africa. So we have the IABC across the world, and we operate in regions as well as on a global scale. So these are some of your leaders, some of the leaders we have on the West African Interest Group, and these are some of the people you could connect with on LinkedIn if you wanted to know more about what we do on the IABC. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. This recording will be on the YouTube channel after this session, and you're able to also view previous sessions. So we're going ahead to introduce our panelists. I'll do a quick introduction of them, and then they'll go on to introduce themselves right after this. Our first panelist is Bodam Taiwo. She's the Customer Marketing Director for West and Central Africa for Diageo Brands. Hello, Bodam. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Okay, next on our panelists, we have Iwokiri Aprioku, is the head of public relations of the NLNG. I'll be calling him Iwo for the purpose of this webinar. Hello, Iwo. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to join you, Dami. Thank you.
Thank you. And our third panelist is Alexandra. She is the manager for branding, corporate communication, and marketing at Udo Udoma and Belu Osage. That's popularly known as UUBO. Thank you, Alex, for joining us.
Hi, Dami. Thank you so much.
Also, for the purpose of this webinar, she'll go by Alex. So thank you all. I'll now give you some time to briefly introduce yourselves, and then we'll go on to the questions for today. So we can start with you, Alex.
Oh, okay then. Hi, good afternoon. I am Alexandra Ehiujama, head of branding, marketing, corporate communication at the law firm of Udo Udoma and Belu Osage. I have about over 10 years experience working across a plethora of sectors, including legal, nonprofit, international governance, media, and it's a pleasure to be here today and to be adding my voice to this interesting conversation put together by the African Interest Group of the IABC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. We can't wait to learn from you. Okay, next up, Iwo.
Thanks, Dami. And good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Iwakiri Aprioku, and I like to describe myself as a strategic business communicator and an engagement specialist. For upwards of 17 years, I've been doing a lot of stakeholder engagements, event management, the entire gamut of public relations, if you'd like to say that. And I think for me, it's really about how we use the skills we have to impact lives. And that's what I think we're going to do today again, sharing knowledge. And I hope you sit tight and also join in and contribute. Thank you so much. And back to you, Dami.
Thank you, Iwo. And over to you, Bodam.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a joy to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Bodam. I have almost 2 decades worth of experience across marketing, commercial, business development, and across different industries as well, telecommunications, and more recently, for the larger part of my experience, really in the FMCG space. I like to say that I love building brands. That's what I do for a living, building brands and building profitable businesses. And I'm really excited to be having this conversation today with you.
Thank you, Bodam. You can tell that we have an excellent team of panelists here today. So sit tight, like Iwo said, and get ready to learn. As we go along, please feel free again to drop your questions in the Q&A, and we'll respond to them as we go along. Again, you're welcome to today's conversation. We're talking about social listening and sentiment analysis, gauging public perception. So for the purpose of our very diverse audience who are joining us today, we don't want to assume that everybody knows what this is all about. So Iwo, I'll begin with you. Can we break down this topic and just make it easy for people to understand what we're talking about? What is social listening? What is sentiment analysis?
Thank you so much, Dami. So, so in this era of social media, indeed, our world is hyper connected right now, and we all get online and we communicate and have conversations online using our Facebook tools, our social media tools, etc. And by using these tools, we, one way or the other, are able to influence and shape public perception, preferences for brands, for organizations, for celebrities, and the like. But as communicators, it's important that we don't only use social media for information dissemination, but we also get valuable feedback that can gauge and help with information decision taking, rather. And so that's where we can talk about social listening, right? Social listening, in simple terms, is just about using social media monitoring tools to then listen to online media chatter, online media mentions, and then just see how we can make sense out of it. We use tools such as Hootsuite, Talkwalker, etc., and the likes, and see how we can then make sense out of all the online conversations that we catch online, and then the hashtags, etc. And then we just see how we can make sense out of it and see if we can take some decisions with that. And with sentiment analysis, it's really about using machine language, simple, using natural language processes to codify this online chatter, online mentions, pieces of text, as you may call it, and then just make some sense out of it and see how it then has some emotional tone. Is it positive, it's negative, or it's neutral, right? And so that way we're able to make some good sense out of it, and we're able to take some decisions for business purposes. So that's what social listening is really all about, and sentiment analysis. And really, if you can see, these two tools can really influence public perception. So it would lead to take some time and discuss this afternoon and see how we then see how it influences decision making. And so we'll have a deep dive into this and then begin to dissect it and see how we could get some learning about how to use these tools. So thank you, and back to you, Dami.
Thank you so much. That's an excellent background to this conversation. So you have defined social listening to be using social media tools to listen. So it's no longer a one-way street where we just dump stuff on social media as communicators, but we can also use it to our advantage by listening into what the audience is saying about our brands, about the people whose reputation we're managing, and the likes. Thank you so much for that introduction, Iwo. Alex, over to you. So we're beginning now with a set of questions. Why should business leaders even care about what's being said online? Especially, I mean, if you're in the FMCG space like Bodam is, for instance, if your sales are up there and everything, you're hitting the marks, why should you care about what's being said online?
Thank you, Dami. So, brands and organizations should care about what's being said about them online, irrespective of them making sales or not, because public perception, first of all, shapes future opportunities and risks. There are several reasons why business leaders and organizations should care about what's being said about them online. Because, first, it helps you to understand your customers' perception, your customers' pain points, your customers' opinions, their feedback. And should there be a change in customer attitude, listening online is one way you can get that. And don't forget that sometimes if there's that change in customer attitude, it can lead to reduced sales. And these sales we're talking about is no longer there. Also, social listening is so important to brands because it helps you to identify concerns, which can then grow into issues and then a full-blown crisis even before it happens. Saying it helps you to mitigate crisis. So when you listen online, you get to know the pain points of your customers, you get to know the concerns, you get to know things that bother them, you get to know what they're not happy about your brand, and that way you can solve that issue, nip it in the bud before it becomes, a full-blown crisis, which no brand wants to go into. In as much as you have sales, it's also important to understand people's perception of your brand. And when a business listens online, they know what people think about them. Also, don't forget that there's the thing of a brand sees itself as this is the identity. But how do people see the brand? I remember years ago, there's a product that in Nigeria, it was supposed to be a seasoning product. But people believe that if you use that product, even Jik, Nigerian bleach, cannot make your clothes as white as that seasoning product. So in the mind of that brand, they were selling out, but as a detergent, a laundry product, not as a seasoning. However, yes, when they started listening, they noticed that, okay, people think that we are good for laundry purposes. So for that reason, they started trying to change the public perception about them, getting brand influencers to show themselves cooking with this laundry product, and then they were able to get a brand alignment between their image, their identity. Then, monitoring online conversations is also another way you can, quote unquote, spy on your competitors. You can't go to your competitor's office and say, tell me what you are doing now. Show me your
Right.
books. What's your strategy? The only way you can do it is just to listen online. So
Okay.
social listening enables you know what your competitors are doing. And if you can see, let's say you see that you have a similar product and there are concerns about that product from your competitors, and it would help you, check on your own and let's solve this problem before our customers start talking about it. Helps you to see their strategies, their business processes, and helps you to even become better. In other ways, you can say it can help you to get your own unique selling proposition for your own brand. Also, when you listen online, you get to know the people who are your brand advocates, who preach the gospel of your brand, people who like your brand. And this is organically, you're not even
Yeah.
funding them. You see that from your social listening, you notice that, okay, maybe every Thursday there's this OAP that uses our product. So when it gets to his show, he's always talking about us. So it helps you to notice people who like your brand, who talk about your brand, who advocate for your brand. And should there be a need for brand ambassadors? Hello, you have a ready market already.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then I would say that, lastly, business leaders listening to online conversations about their brand would help them improve on their business strategies, on their marketing plans, thereby helping them make data-driven decisions, which will help with the growth and the development of their brand and lead to even more sales for them. Thank you.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you so much for that Wonderful response. So, in summary, you said that social listening helps us to helps our businesses to identify future opportunities and mitigate crises. Just in simple terms, I think that's my takeaway from what you have just said. Thank you so much for your response. We have questions coming in already. I see them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. But over to you now. So, what do you think? Do you think there's any risk in relying only on internal feedback instead of tuning onto public perception? I know Alex has made some references in her response, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Thank you so much, Damilola. So, of course, there are a lot of risks because when you rely solely on internal feedback, you create what can be called an echo chamber. And we all know this. We can sit in rooms, we think our idea is the next best thing after sliced bread. We're like, we've got it. And you go out and it just sort of falls flat. And while internal teams can tend to have very valuable insights, the thing is we often view our brands and our businesses through a very filtered and optimistic lens. Public perception, on the other hand, really reflects how your audience actually feels. And it's raw, it's real, and in some cases, it's very much unfiltered. So what are some of the risks if we ignore external sentiments? I'll share maybe 2 or 3, or maybe 4. The first is that you can tend to miss early warning signs of negative conversations about your brand. And these things usually start in a very subtle way online. And that's the benefit of social listening, isn't it? Because you're able to pick up these cues very quickly. So if you're not listening externally, you may miss a brewing crisis until it's already gone viral. The second thing is that there's a risk of misaligned messaging. So sometimes you risk crafting campaigns or strategies that really just fall flat, or worse, that offend. And I'll give an example in just a second, because they don't align with what your audience values. They don't align with what your audience is currently experiencing. The third possible risk is a loss of relevance. And things like trends, languages, expectations, they evolve very quickly, and we're in that kind of world. Internal feedback might lag behind cultural moments. And if you're out of touch of what's happening in the public, where your audience is, your brand can come across as tone deaf and you very quickly lose relevance. And then the last thing, which is really a very pivotal thing, is around reduced trust. People want to feel heard. People want to feel seen. And if your brand doesn't respond to what's being said publicly, you could come across as disconnected. You could come across as indifferent, or in really severe cases, you could come across as arrogant, right? So this idea of public sentiment and monitoring what the audience is saying, it's really having your hand in a living pulse. And if you're not listening, then you're essentially flying blind. And a very good case of this, if you remember in 2017 or 18, I think it was, Pepsi had this ad with Kendall Jenner, and it came up in 24 hours, the ad went down, right? And it was because the ad at the time, it sort of offended the Black Lives Matter movement in that sense when the ad came out. And internally, the ad probably passed through layers of approvals. I work with a multinational, so I know, right? It probably focused on aesthetics, brand alignment, star power. But externally, it immediately met with backlash because it trivialized what was a social justice movement at that time, right? And this is the thing about public sentiment. When you listen to the conversations around activism, protest, culture, responsibility, you recognize what your brand can step into and what your brand should not touch in that moment.
Thank you so much, Bodam. I like what you said about getting it raw and unfiltered on the public end. This is something you don't get internally because you're blinded, right? You think your ideas are the best. So thank you for that. So I'll go back to Iwo now. Iwo, how can listening tools support broader business goals
Thanks a
and not
lot, Dan.
just comms? Yeah.
Yeah. So listening, just as Alex and Bodam had mentioned, right, supports business in one form or the other, right? Because you're getting unfiltered feedback externally. And it can then give you valuable insight into customer needs, customer preferences. It could also give you insight into emerging reputational risks and the like. So for business, when you gather this information, how you then use that information and that data then now matters. So I give a scenario like on how it can be helpful in enhancing reputational management. I attended a conference sometime last year in Europe, and the organizers, right, in planning for the conference, just by listening to social media chatter about the conference, realized that a viral post had gone out from some pro-environmental groups around the conference, and energy conference, of course. And so what they then now did was immediately they had to tweak their plans and make sure that they put in more arrangements around security, and also beefed up engagements with the group to make sure that they were able to communicate and explain that whatever they were doing was transparent, because they also needed to demonstrate to their financiers that, of course, they were a responsible organization and they had to maintain their reputation. So in doing that, they could have only gotten that information by social listening, right? And they were able to use that to manage their reputation as an organization that organizes conferences, and also for the reputation of the conference. And we were able to go in and conference successfully, right? Again, another scenario is really around customer satisfaction, right? Through online social listening, right? Most of our banks, right, are able to detect when customers have pain points and they have complaints, and they're able to quickly detect and respond to those complaints, right? Because it's real-time feedback that you're getting online, and you're able to then deal with those things real-time too. And also, by just social listening, just as Bodam said, you could observe marketing trends. I'll give us a story around 2019, 2020. There was a lot of chatter around the long queues that everyone was experiencing in the country at petrol stations. And people started talking about solutions and options. And one option that kept resonating was around, could we have modular refineries, right, in the country? Perhaps that could be a solution. An organization picked up on that chatter, right, and then went ahead and in 2020 ended up becoming the organization that built the first modular refinery in Nigeria, in Imo State, right? And it's only because they were listening to online media mentions, right? And that's how they could pick up on that trend and see that there was some niche market that they could latch into, right? And again, just another scenario, just to further buttress how organizations take value out of social listening, is about how HR departments all over the world these days rely on HR recruitment sites like Indeed and Glassdoor, right, to make sure that their employee value propositions, their EVPs, is still competitive and attractive, right? And they're able to attract global top talents. What they have is no longer outdated. They use it to benchmark and make sure that each time they go out and post out an ad for vacancies, they're able to capture and attract top talent. So those are examples of how organizations these days make use of online social media listening and sentiment analysis to gather feedback and then transform it and use it for business decisions. So that's an example, and there are several more, right? And I'm happy that maybe as we continue with this conversation, maybe some other people will share more in the Q&A, and then we could also continue to expand knowledge. Thank you. Back to you, Debbie.
Thank you so much for that response. Again, we have real-time feedback coming across, and businesses using it to observe market trends. So thank you so much for that, Iwo. We have questions in the Q&A, and I would like us to take them. The first question is from Tala, and they say, so much of research on social listening is rooted in biased Western beliefs and values. How can we authentically create standards based on country context and culture? Bodam, are you able to speak to that?
So, I mean, this is actually really a great question, and thank you for asking it, Tala. I think this is really why human oversight roughly still matters a lot in terms of social listening. I think just a few things that I would say is we have to be culturally intelligent in the way that we use our social listening tools. We know that Western tools, Western frameworks could nuances in tone, language, slang of other cultures or other contexts, right? So how can we begin to make the shift towards a more authentic context-based standards? Maybe I'll say 2 or 3 things, and the other panelists can help as well. I think the first is to begin to define sentiment in the context of local cultural norms. And what do I mean? In some cultures, sarcasm, shade, even praise may look and sound different. And when you're putting in the words and the things in your tools, you have to develop your own training tools based on data that's sourced locally. And to do that, we have to start investing in maybe local linguistic intelligence, right? To begin to customize our sentiment analysis models in a way that understand how it is. And let me give a basic example, because these tools, a lot of it are programmed, right? If you program in something like maybe Pidgin English or a normal slang that's that's used and it's easy to understand, it could improve accuracy beyond the Western bias. And then the other thing is to begin to collaborate with local analysts and to decentralize what your benchmarks look like. So what are the dashboards and KPIs that you're going after in a way that's relevant to you? They have to reflect the societal concerns of the countries or the regions it is that you're listening to. And then where are you listening? So maybe if, depending on where it is the country is, if a particular platform is not relevant, then you look to another platform. And let me give you a bit of a basic example. Let's assume, I'm not saying it is, but let's assume that in a country like Nigeria, let's assume Twitter is not relevant. Let's assume where the basic conversations really happen is on a platform such as Nairaland, let's just say, right? So you would wait for one and then you would drop the other. And those local nuances are the things that come through, which is why human insight at the bottom is still very important in leaning into that. But I think it's a journey that's still going. Ultimately, we know that social listening must evolve from just being data-driven to being context-led. And that is the other question of when you do get the insights, what do you do with them? And I'm sure we'll have that conversation as we go alongside. Yeah. Thanks, Dami.
Thank you, Bodam. I like your response on being culturally intelligent. So we need to take it a step further than just creating something across board, because it never really works that way. Thank you so much. So I'll go quickly to the next question for the sake of our time. I think it's Emma, and they say that they're worried about the restriction of social listening to online issues analysis. Does it mean that audience perceptive analysis, deliberately done sometimes, or engagement management cannot form crucial part of social listening? So I'll take that again. Emma is worried about the restriction of social listening to online issues analysis. Does it mean that audience perceptive analysis, deliberately done sometimes, or engagement management cannot form crucial part of social listening? We have an engagement master. Iwo, do you want to respond to that?
Thanks a lot, Damian. Thanks, Emma, for the question. So, by all means, when you have engagements, right, it's still about getting feedback. And whilst it may be online, you get the online feedback, which is unfiltered. From your own engagements, you may also get more feedback and insights that may be valuable. And in the course of engagements, what's important really, it's really about what do you do with the feedback that you get, right? Are you able to respond as an organization? Are you able to, or you just jettison whatever feedback you get and let it slide and make light of it, right? But what's important is about when you get the feedback, how do you use the feedback? Is it able to cause a change? Is it able to cause you to move from point A to point B, right? Because you have received feedback. And when you do not take action on any feedback received, then you begin to normalize risk. And what can happen when you normalize risk is complacency sets in, right? So be it from an engagement, be it from social listening, when you get feedback, it's important that you take that feedback and then you utilize it and you adapt your situation and whatever processes you have that the feedback is coming to affect. I hope that answers your question, Emma, or others could chip in, please.
Thank you so much. I think we'll just pause there. I believe that as we go along, the other questions will shed more light on that question. So as we go along, please, I would like us to keep our answers pretty brief so that we can cover as much grounds as possible. So let's take it forward to tools and technology, and I'm coming to you, Alex. What should a comms team look for when choosing a listening tool? Let's bear in mind the costs. Let's bear in mind the relevance, like has just come across from the questions. So, what should the comms team look out for?
Okay, thank you so much, Dami. So when choosing a listening tool, a comms team should first of all bear in mind its goal, its objectives, its KPIs. You need to be certain that whatever tool you choose will help you enable you get the results you're looking for. So with that sorted, some of the technicalities to consider when choosing a tool, I'll just list about 3 or 4. One, look at the coverage breadth of the tool you are going for. If you're looking for, if you're looking to mine a lot of conversation, get feedback that is valuable, you can't just restrict your tools to social media alone. What happens to other form of user generated content, reviews, blog posts? So you need to go for a tool that has a wide coverage breadth. You can think of tools like Brandwatch, Talkwalker, Sprinkler, of course. Then you have to, if you want to listen as a comms team, if you want to listen, you have to be present. So you need to look for a tool that gives you real-time feedback, not a tool that gathers the feedback a month later and gives you is useless. So you need something that's giving you real-time feedback so you're able to respond immediately. So Talkwalker also is another good one with regards to that. You should look out for a tool that has accurate sentiment analysis. My colleague Bodam just talked about that. A tool that's able to detect nuances, sarcasms, regional language. Like she mentioned, Pidgin. Generally, the word mad is negative. It means unwell, something is not okay. But in our region, mad is a good word. It means it's superb, it's top notch, it's great. So you need to ensure that you're using a tool that understands mad and other nuances to ensure that you don't get wrong sentiment reading when you're collating your data. It's also important for you to use a tool that makes your reporting easy. One that helps you to also customize so that at the end of the day, all these results you're getting, how are you able to make sense of it? You must get one that helps with your reporting. You should also get one that aids with integration. There are some tools that are not user friendly. You can't use this tool and that tool. So as a comms practitioner, you go on this dashboard to look for this result. Let's look for one that helps with integration with other CRM and other tools that you use. And then of course, like you mentioned also, a comms team must know your budget. You can't have a budget of $50 that will help you pay for Hootsuite and be looking at Sprinkler and the others. No. In essence, a comms team should look for and choose a tool that helps you to make faster, wiser, strategic decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That was quite hilarious, though. But yes, we need to consider integration. We need to consider coverage. We need to consider breadth, and we need to very much consider our budgets. So thank you so much for that, Alex. I'll come over to you, Iwo. Do you think AI is changing how we analyze sentiments, or is it just adding noise to it? What are your thoughts?
Thanks a lot, Danny. So AI, it's something I think as comms practitioners we are embracing these days. Gone are the days when we thought that AI was going to take over our jobs and we were going to lose our jobs. But these days we recognize that AI is an enabler, and so we can then now bring AI and use AI. And so just as Alex and Bodam had mentioned, right? The different tools that we kind of use for social media monitoring these days, right? This what I understand, and during the course of my research, I found out that a lot of them have integrated AI in what their programs, right? And so they're able to assess data, big data all over the world, right, from different sources and assess it in real time, right, and assess it really, really fast, right, and get you feedback that you can use and do the analysis as well, so that way you're able to make sense of the data when you have the data, right, and they're able to also in terms of sentiment analysis, detect very quickly when there's a shift in sentiment, right? And so very quickly, if you've been having very positive feedback around your brand, and then there's a negative dip, AI is able to detect that very quickly and analyze and get you that feedback. But again, just as Bodam and Alex had mentioned, right? AI is limited in the sense that it lacks emotional intelligence, right? So it does not understand Mado. So in that sense, right, AI can then interpret Mado and give you wrong data. At that point, then the data that it sends to you, it's then noise, really, right? You can't use it for anything. And so that's when AI again becomes noise, right? In terms of social listening. However, what we've also been taught is that you can train your AI, right? And so just the way you train your pet, you need to invest, right, in training your AI. Take your time to train your AI so that you can get value out of it. And the data it gives you would not just be noise, it will be data that is beneficial and it's useful. It's not data without context. It's data that has a human element to it and has that emotional intelligence. So yeah, with the use of AI that is trained, then I think we would have better social listening, and we wouldn't have noise in when we listen to online media. So I hope that clarifies. Thank you.
It does. Thank you so much, Iwo. So I have a question in the chat from Christine, and I'll just write on the back of that your comments. She's asking, can you use ChatGPT for sentiment analysis?
I haven't tried that, right? But I believe that you can, right? I know I've tried with Hootsuite, and I think it turned out really, really nice, right? Hootsuite just acquired also Talkwater, right? And so they've expanded their platform, and right now they're really, really very good. And just as Alex said, we should be mindful around budget. And so I'm that kind of guy that likes to check my budget. So I think it's bucket friendly too, and I like that as an application to use to check sentiment analysis.
Thank you so much, Iwo. Alex, I see you nodding. Do you have something to share?
Oh no, just in addition, have never actually tried using ChatGPT for sentiment analysis, but that's a take-home assignment for me. Thank you so much, Christine.
All right, thank you again, Christine. Please keep the questions coming. You can put them in the Q&A, and we'll proceed with the questions. So, Bodam, I'm coming to you now. You touched on turning insights to action, right? So once you have the data, what do we do next? How do we move from insights to strategy?
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I think this is where the work really begins, right? Because insights are only powerful when they drive some sort of action. I think maybe to ask a couple of things. First is to identify your so what. We get all these data, we get all these reports, and we look at it and we're very like, oh, we have these reports and look at what it say. Beautiful. Don't just report volume. Don't just report your sentiment scores. Dig deeper. What exactly is shifting in consumer emotion? What's shifting in their need? What's shifting in their expectation? What's the underlying truth that the data is actually pointing into? And that's when you begin to get the gold. The second big thing is how can you map those insights into your business objectives, right? So you link each insight into a strategic pillar, whether it's brand perception, product feedback, campaign performance, customer service, or even competitive advantage. This way, you're ensuring that your listing doesn't just stay in this public relations silo, but it's actually helping your business objectives. Then the third thing is to bring in your cross-functional teams. How can you share insights with customer experience teams? How can you share insights with your commercial teams, with your product developers, and of course, with your marketing teams, right? So a trending complaint, for example, could lead to a user some user experience updates, right? Positive sentiment about something could inform your next launch strategy. So bring in the cross-functional teams to help them understand what the data is saying and what the insights are. And then the last thing, because sentiments do a lot of things, maybe two more. Prioritize and prototype. You cannot act on every single thing that you hear out there, right? Group insights by urgency, group insights by the impact they have on your business, and then begin to test your responses in small bits. Adjust your tone here, launch a content piece here, open a dialogue there before scaling into bigger strategies. And then the final thing is let your audience know that you're listening and you're responding. Too many big brands today forget that it's a two-way street. So whether it's tweaking your product, whether you need to apologize for something that you've done, or really apologize for betraying the trust of those who love you and who patronize you, do that. Because ultimately, this is what builds trust and this is what builds that emotional connection with your audience. So I think what I'm saying is the insights are just the start. It's the launch pad, but strategy really happens when you take that insight and you turn it into a leadership model. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bodam. Very excellent response. I like what you said about it being the start point. You can't just take the data and just run with it. So that leads me to the next question, Alex. Who needs to be at the table when acting on public sentiment? So we're not just running like headless chickens when we get these things.
Thank you. So, just in line with what Bodam said, I think she said something about a cross-functional team. And I think that cross-functional team needs to be at the table when talking about public sentiments, because the sentiments, the emotion of a business, of a brand affects its business. So I would say some of the key stakeholders and teams that should be on the table will be first, us, corporate comms. Charity begins at home. We must be there to shape the message, respond to sentiment shifts and lead this conversation and this change with regards to the sentiments of a brand. We need the marketing team there. I remember Bodam gave an example of the Pepsi advert that had Kendall Jenner. The marketing team needs to be a table at such discussions because it will help them to adjust their campaigns, the tone, and the positioning for the brand. Customer service also needs to be at the table because most times you tend to see there's a lag or delay with responses to customers. So they need to be at the table as well, so they know where they fit in the large picture. The product and the service teams, they need to be there because they are making these products or services. And so they need to know the features to tweak here and there in order to make sure that their customers are satisfied. Of course, you need management there. You need top leadership, the executives there, because those are the people that will, okay, that budget, they're always reducing from us and, give us a go. So I think public sentiments, really, the perception of a brand is not just a comms issue. It's a business issue. So this cross-functional team, they have to be there when discussing things concerning the sentiment of the brand.
Thank you so much, Alex. I mean, this conversation now emphasizes why, as communicators, we need to be at the table when business decisions are being made. It's not just, okay, we have a plan. Here you go, comms, go do your thing. No, we need to be at the table when conversations are happening. Thank you again. It's been a wonderful conversation so far. We're not there yet. We're still gaining traction. If you're just joining in, you're welcome. We're talking about social listening and sentiment analysis, gauging public perception. And we have audience from across the world. We have from cities across Nigeria. We have from South Africa, from New York, from Ireland. I see people from Rwanda, from South Africa. A very big welcome to you. We're so glad that you can share your afternoon, morning, evening with us. We're going on with more questions and more conversations. Please keep your questions coming in the Q&A and we'll get to them. And we've been talking to our very excellent team of panelists and they've been sharing their thoughts on this conversation. So our next question will be for Iwo. What signs do you think signals a brewing reputational risk that needs a fast response? We've been talking about listening, but we can't act on everything. So when you need to act, what do you need to see?
Thanks a lot. So once reputational risks are real and they need to be properly evaluated and managed, right? And when you have social listening and you get some feedback, uh, unfiltered or filtered as case may be, there's a couple of things you need to look out for. One, when you see a sudden spike in negative mentions around your brand, you need to then see that as a red flag. Then you see a shift in sentiment trend when you have been having like a positive trend for quite a while, and then suddenly there's a dip and you have a negative trend. I mean, in maybe a very short time, 2, 3, 4 hours, right? It means something is happening, and at that point, you need to then begin to check out what's really happening. And then again, when you have viral photos, videos, posts, and hashtags about your brand go out very quickly in real time, right? It means something is happening and you need to evaluate it very quickly and respond. And you also see a high frequency of negative words associated with your brand. So things like fraud, scam, protest. It's also a red flag that something is coming, something wants to happen, right? Something that could impact the reputation of your organization. And again, one that's very important, but sometimes it's like kind of overlooked, is when you see silence from your really loyal online supporters, right? And then suddenly there's a lot of negative mention about your organization, but suddenly your online loyal supporters have gone silent, right? It's a sign that in Nigerian parlance, maybe you have offended the gods, right? So you need to go and check out and find out what have you really done, what's really happening. That it's a red flag that you need to really deal with. And just as I mentioned earlier, right, risk normalization, it's when complacency sets in. And for an organization, that's really, really bad. When you see these red flags, it's time to call in your crisis communications team to get to work, because once you have real-time feedback, you need to respond in real time too, right? So my takeaway really is that once you see these red flags, you need to do a couple of things. um, Once you have social listening going on, you must evaluate what your reputational risks are and prepare for that, prepare a response. Once those red flags trigger, you get your crisis comms team to get to work and respond as appropriate and respond in real time. And where you can, and you have the budget to, you should also invest in periodic drills, right? Because drills help you prepare for that day. Because as the Bible will say, let he that thinks he stands take heed lest he falls, right? If you prepare, right, you will then make sure that on the day that it actually emerges, right, you will be able to respond and respond appropriately. It'll be like the German team, you'll be working like in one sync, right? And you'll be able to respond appropriately. So those are a couple of red flags I've highlighted and how to deal with those red flags if they ever emerge. And back to you, Dami.
Thank you so much, Iwo. And Michael is asking a question which just syncs to what you're just saying. And he's saying that how can one respond to operational risks when partners are not convinced that they need to respond, but they rather think they can buy time? So, as a communication professional, I'm sure you may have experienced this when you're flagging this issue. This is a risk, but no, the other members of the management team are not convinced it is.
Absolutely. You need to just in presenting the risk, right? And what the feedback you get from your social listening, it's usually good to present the opportunity cost. What would happen in the event we do not take action, right? Is it going to be an impact to our reputation? Is there going to be a loss to our social license to operate? Are we going to just lose revenue, right? Once you point those opportunity costs, what we're going to lose in the event we do not take action, I believe that any sensible C-suite will then be able to move to action and address that risk once it emerges. I hope that answers the question, Michael.
I believe it does.
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent question, an excellent response. Because yes, if you tell them, look, this will happen if we don't do this, then it should it should prompt them to action. So thank you again for that wonderful and intelligent response. So I'm coming back to you, Bodam. How do we prepare for real-time responses when the sentiment shifts rapidly. So we've been doing great, excellent, positive sentiments all the way, and then all of a sudden we have um, a negative sentiment that needs us to respond very quickly. How do we prepare for this?
I'll say a few things. First off, one of the things to keep in mind is speed, structure, and sensitivity, right? Speed, because you can't afford to sleep on it. I remember in a previous organization I worked with, we've been doing amazing. We'd launched this beautiful campaign. And then we invited an influencer to come on, and he did, and he had a horrid experience for whatever reason. Everything was, we had all the explanations, but it didn't matter because he had millions of followers on social media and he went on a rampage, right? And I'm giving you an example of what can happen when you don't nip it in a bud. So he went on a rampage on social media and he was saying, look, listen, this brand, I don't know what. And someone else would say, you know what, he normally just talks a lot. It would tide over. Let's not answer. Let's wait until the next day. Then the next day, okay, you know what? Since he's still making noise, let's just deploy some people into his comment section so that for everything he's saying, they're just there saying, oh, but we had a nice time. And we did this. And see, I'm already touching my head because that's the migraine that I had then forming all over again. It didn't work. And we had to now go back to basics. So what do? You prepare for war in the times of peace, so that when the time of war comes, you can be at peace. So you set up a listening command center, right? You use your dashboards to track your brand mentions, your keywords, the sentiment in real time. Establish in advance a response protocol. So you must have a clear escalation matrix. Who reviews posts that are flagged, right? Who signs off on messaging? What qualifies as a level 1, which is a minor thing, a level 2, which is something you have to respond to, or a level 3, which is an actual crisis. Having this clarity in advance really saves time when emotions are high. Because best believe when they are dragging your brand like a secondhand generator on social media, tension, emotions are going to be high. So it's great to pre-establish how you would respond as an organization or as a business. And then the third thing is create real-time content toolkits. What does this mean? Have things like prepared templated responses, brand tone guidelines, holding statements that can very quickly be adapted. As much as is possible, have pre-approved visual assets that you can deploy or brand videos that you can deploy in advance as well. And these are all the things that are ongoing when you enter into crisis mode. Then train a cross-functional response team that can be on top of things. Ideally, you should have a representative from senior leadership. When there's a crisis, depending on how big, the reputation of every organization sits with the managing director or the general manager of that company. So that person must be involved or must have a delegate involved in your crisis response team. You have a member of marketing or public relations, a member of your brand protection team, a member of commercial, essentially all the relevant departments should be there. And this team should run regular drills to say, okay, what's happening? What do we need to do? And what do we need to, how do we need to respond? And the final thing is, as we're saying speed, you have to balance it with empathy. It's not just about responding quickly. Remember, there is an issue that's happened. So it's about responding correctly. And a lot of the time, because we're the custodians of the brand, our minds are usually to, how can we respond quickly and just bury this thing? Something has actually happened. Somebody is upset, someone is offended, someone is hurt. So emotional intelligence matters just as much as efficiency. So you need to ask yourself, is my tone aligned with the public mood? Is my tone aligned with the public sentiment? And in the world that we live in, where one tweet can literally set off a firestorm, real-time response is not optional. It boils down to leadership, and it is a leadership skill. So as a brand, before you even get into all of that, is to ask yourself, are we ready for when the crisis will come? Because best believe it will come, right? And I think these things will help as you go along. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bodam. I really like what you said about not just answering quickly, but answering correctly. So many times we're focused on, well, let's respond. We need to respond right now, right now. But how emotional are we in the response that we are providing? I think that's excellent. Thank you so much. We have a question, and I would like you to take it, Alex. In your experience, which social media platform most accurately signals an emerging issue? And this is a question from Rihanna.
Okay, hi Rihanna. So I would say that I don't think in terms of signaling an emerging issue, I wouldn't put it down to a tool. I'll put it down to your analysis of the information you get. Because the truth is, most tools will give you trends, issues, all the works. But like Bodam said, you get all these reports. What do you do with them? Are you going through them? Are you going through the sentiments and seeing, oh, there's a spike in negative sentiments? That means what? An issue is brewing. Are you going through it and said, okay, since this is the issue we've been noticing, what should we do to respond? And like she said, someone is hot, someone is offended. How are you responding to this? Customers have an issue with something. How are you responding to it? So I wouldn't say it boils down to there's a specific tool that helps with issue identification. At the end of the day, as it was said, AI can't take our jobs. There's a human angle in it. You analyzing it, you making sense of it, you understanding the reports, you interpreting it is what will help you to notice there's an issue. And sentiment analysis, tracking, and monitoring would help you do that. So all tools are good within your budget, within like the tools decisions I highlighted earlier in choosing your tools. All tools are great, but you must put in the work to notice when there's an issue. Take care of your brand. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I think that's an excellent response. So there's no better tool. It just depends on how you maximize it and optimize it for your benefit. Thank you so much. Just writing on that question, Alex, how can monitoring sentiments help you catch issues before they escalate? I know Bodam and you will have touched on this, but maybe personal examples from your experience so far can help to further drive on this point.
So Bodam has said something that scared me today. A crisis will come. She said it will come. So, but just like the question Rihanna asked earlier, no crisis is born in a day. A crisis is a build-up of dissatisfaction. It starts from dissatisfaction, a little concern, it becomes a latent issue, and then that crisis has happened. So you saw it coming. So sentiment analysis helps you to monitor and track the perception of your brand. When you track the sentiments from your brand, you will notice that if you notice like a spike in negative comments, that's a highlighter to show you that an issue is brewing. So when you notice that, it means that by tracking these sentiments, you'll be able to detect a sudden shift in the sentiments, the emotion of your consumers, your customers. And then this negative spike could be because, let's say, with the Pepsi one, you released an advert that is not in line with what people think. Maybe you released a new product, but people are having difficulties with the product or your messaging is unclear. But when you analyze the sentiment, you're able to know whatever that issue is and you attend to it. And like Bodam said, your clients, your customers must know that you are responsive, that you are listening, you are responsive. So I would end by saying that sentiment analysis is like a smoke detector before the fire gets burning. So always track your sentiments so you don't wake up one day to a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So always track your sentiments so that it doesn't become a full-blown crisis. Thank you so much. We have a question in the Q&A from Michael. And Bodam, please, I'd like you to respond to this. What is the position of emotion in responding to risk signal? You spoke about emotion earlier, and that's why I'm bringing this your way.
So, the short answer is we're always emotional when it comes to our brands, always. We built it. They're like our babies, I know. Except that when it comes to risk, you can't afford to be emotional. You have to be more strategic. And it's to take a few steps back. And that's why this thing of predetermining what your response is going to be, it helps you guard against emotional responses and emotional reactions. And that's the right thing, because you can't afford to react when you're in a crisis. You have to be calm enough to respond. And that means you have to have a predetermined way of acting. So whatever your business is, whatever your industry is, it's for you to take a few steps back to say, a day may come where, and I'm using may now, so that because I scared Alex a little bit. So let me not say a day will come. A day may come where you're going to need to draw up and defend your brand in the public, right? Something may happen. Is to start asking yourself, one, what are the critical values of my brand today? How do we want customers and consumers to feel when they come in contact with us? What are the top 3-4 words we want them to use to describe us every time they do think about us? And having this thing ingrained, not just in your mind and in your heart, but in the mind and in the hearts of those who work with you, mean that on the day when something happens, you're able to rise above your emotions to say, this is our North Star. Genuinely, we failed. They didn't feel safe when they were with us. Or maybe they misunderstood, or maybe the communication didn't land in the way we thought it was going to land. So we still want to be XYZ to our consumers, and this is how we're going to apologize, make restitution, whatever the case may be. But the short answer, you have to rise above your emotions, especially if you want to be a brand that will be here in the long term. Yeah, I hope that helps. Okay.
Does it really does? But thank you. I like what you said about having that toolkit and you have it ready when you're in the right frame of mind. You're not responding, you're not reacting when you should be responding. So that's an excellent response. Thank you so much. I can't believe it's been 1 hour already. We've been having such an interesting conversation. So as we gradually wind down, you will have a question for you. Where should we draw the line between listening and surveillance? So this leans more towards the ethics and privacy. Where should we draw the line? Alex already spoke about, trying to see what your competitors are doing online. Where do we need to draw the line?
Right, thanks for that, Dami. So, thankfully, the IABC has given us the code of ethics, 11 of them, that reminds us that as communicators, we have great power and potential to influence global economies, right? I try to take an analogy when I talk with my children. I tell them that with great power comes great responsibility, right? And they're like, oh, they are dad again, right? So but bringing it back to what we're talking about, really, we need to act ethically, and if we have to go about listening, we have to listen ethically, right? And so there are 4 guiding principles I kind of want to share. One is that whenever we have to do social listening, we need to monitor public data only. We should, as much as possible, avoid private conversations. We should also analyze aggregated data, uh, not individual data, and as much as possible adhere to privacy laws. GDPR in Nigeria, we have NDPR. In different countries, they have different privacy laws, but we see how to then adhere to them. And then, as much as possible, where we get out to source data from third parties or vendors, we should supervise what are their own ethical standards to make sure that they do not unintentionally pass on wrong practices and the consequences of that to our own organizations or to our own brands, right? And that's really about it. Those are the 4 things, really. One, monitor public data, analyze aggregated data, adhere to privacy laws, and supervise vendors and third parties that you source data from to make sure that they adhere to ethical standards. Going outside those 4 principles, really, it's about crossing the line, and then you then begin to move from social media monitoring, social listening, to more of surveillance and investigation. It then become like a spy, if you would like to call that, because very quickly it's a thin line, and you could very quickly cross that line. So we need to be very careful around that. Most organizations, in recognition of this ethical listening, right, publish their compliance to privacy laws, GDPR, on their websites, right? And once you go, you're bold enough to publish that on your website, right? You see that you make conscious effort to adhere to those rules, and whatever social media listening that you're doing, social listening, sentiment analysis, and the likes, you will then be doing that ethically, right? I'll leave us with the case study of Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, right? If we want to go and study the impact of not adhering to these privacy laws. You could think about what happened in that case study and maybe take some learning out of that. But for sake of time, I'll just leave it here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Iwo. So aggregated data, public data, we shouldn't go beyond anything that is not in the public view, really. Otherwise, we'll be moving over to surveillance, which is not something we want to do. So we have another question, or we have two questions rather in the Q&A. And one is from Boyega, and they say, how do we deal with, sorry, I'd like Alex to take this. How do we deal with low trust stakeholders or consumers who have a high level of skepticism to any messaging and usually prefer to believe the worst?
Okay, so I think let me take it again. Sorry. How do you deal
How
with
do we
low
deal with,
trust cost
yeah,
stakeholders or consumers who have a high level of skepticism to any messaging and usually
usually prefer to
believe the
believe the
worst?
worst?
The truth is, people would always be people. But as a brand, you must stay true to your word. You must be consistent. Your word is your bond. And in as much as there are people like that, social listening helps you to listen, to know what people are saying. That way, you can then act on what they are saying. You can now lead smarter and lead better. The truth is, after a while, there's usual hearsay, and then for lack of a better word, there's usual bad belly. But if they bring out the facts, if you've been consistent, if you're listening, if you're improving, you're making changes here and there, any sane person can see that the brand is keeping to its word of fulfilling customers' needs, of solving a problem, creating solutions that solve issues. So people would always be people, but as a brand, be true to yourself, be honest. When you notice a problem out there, remove your emotions behind and do what is right. Be ethical. And the truth is, data speaks for itself. If you bring out the facts after a bit of time, you can see the progression, you can see the changes. And people who are open-minded, who want to see and what is out there, would actually see the brand's proposition, the brand's promise, the brand's trajectory, and then they could have a change of mind or attitude if it's based on facts. Thank
I
you.
like that response. So consistency is key. That's just a summary of what Alex is saying. Thank you so much for that response, and thank you for asking the question. We have another question from Inkechi, and I'd like Bodam to take this just because I think it's in your area, the FMCG space. And they're asking, how can one use sentiment analysis in consumer behavior? She's citing the recent case of tomato paste criticism by a consumer who was locked up because she dared comment negatively on the brand.
Thank you for
What are
this.
your thoughts?
Thank you for this question, Nkechi. You know this thing we've spoken about emotions, right? It's a big deal. And really what that was just an emotional response to a consumer's valid, legitimate conversation. We do have freedom of speech in this country, in every country actually that exists in the world. So I think a few things to think about. If you think about what happened after, we have this whole thing where, for those who are not aware, the consumer came out and said the tomato paste was a little bit too sweet, right? And the owners of the company took her and literally locked her up and sued her for 5 billion or something equally ridiculous. But what did we see? A few things. What started from a single negative review ultimately led to this nationwide boycott conversation of different people saying, look, this brand, Me Too, I've had a bad experience. It was like the Me Too movement, except for tomato paste, right? And they kept on going on and on. So the question is, what do you use your sentiment analysis to do? Use it to track emotional triggers. If they were tracking, maybe they could have picked up early anger, maybe they could have picked up outrage or disappointment, not just about the quality of the product, but about how the brand responds to things, right? So this would have revealed the emotional drivers behind consumers' reactions, which is key to understanding the behavior and the behavioral shifts of your consumers. The second thing is it helps you to spot emerging movements. And again, thinking back to this example that you cited, that one critical post quickly became a consumer rights issue. It was amplified by influencers, amplified by the media, amplified by everyday citizens. So sentiment analysis can help brands to detect and recognize these early waves before they turn into a tsunami. Yeah, granted, they withdrew the lawsuits and all of that, but the damage has been done. So the third thing is that when you use your sentiment analysis, it's to understand the perception of your brand beyond the product. The outrage wasn't about the taste of the tomato paste, if you recall. It was about perceived injustice. It was about perceived oppression, and it was just about being tone deaf. So it shows that, and we see this a lot every time you do research, consumer behavior today is very values driven, especially amongst the younger generation, whether it's on the African continent, in Asia, in Europe, very values driven. So your sentiment analysis reveals the deeper story behind what it is that's trending. And final thing I'll say is, you can use this to really position your brand strategy and to inform your crisis strategy as well. So every time we say sentiment analysis, it's not just a marketing metric. It's actually a decoder of consumer behavior. And let's put that at the back of our minds. So just thinking back to your question here, which is just around how do you use it? These are the ways that you use it to say, how can we understand the behavior of our consumers? How do they react when they're unheard, when they feel mistreated? They don't just stop buying, but they mobilize an action against your brand. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Nkechi she's excited about your response. So thank you, Bodam. We have another question from Thelma. I think this will be the last question for the sake of our time. And Iwa, I would like you to respond to this, please. Thelma says there's a lot of brand skepticism riding mostly on the changing global economic crisis. What will you say to brands to keep their integrity and their brand promise in the social media space?
Thanks a lot, Dami and Thelma. Indeed, globally, everyone is feeling the pinch with the global economic crisis. But I think to ensure that your brand remains authentic, you need to remain to your brand values. And so whenever you pick up feedback from the social media space, you need to also respond with clarity, with honesty, and with empathy. And I think that's something that Bodan had mentioned earlier, right? We need to just stay true to our values. But however, in communicating, we must communicate back honestly, respond back with empathy, and comment back and respond back with clarity. And that way we will be able to maintain our true brand value, maintain our integrity and our brand promise. I hope that answers your question, Thelma.
Thank you. I think there was some mix-up. I think the question was asked by someone else, but maybe network did its thing. So apologies for that. Yeah. So for the sake of our time, I would like us to do another round of rapid fire. What will be your takeaway? What will be your closing word to our audience today? And I'll start off with Alex. So just 1-2 minutes rapid fire summary.
So I would say that in today's hyper-connected world, perception is key. Social listening and sentiment analysis is not a nice to have for brands, it's a must have. It helps you to stay relevant and it helps you to make smarter decisions. As a leading brand, you don't want to be reactive. You must lead. And the way you can lead is by collating, analyzing content, online conversations about your brand. That way you can lead smarter. When you listen, you don't just react, you make smarter decisions. So I would say that for every brand, listening is the first step in making better data-driven decisions. And today, as a brand, you don't ask, should we engage in social listening? Can you afford not to? So to us corporate communications professionals, here's to us listening and making smarter decisions for our brands. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. So it's not a matter of should we have to. It's a must. Thank you so much, Iwo.
Thanks a lot, Dami, and thanks a lot everyone for contributing. I think we've just only scratched the surface here, and only set the pace for further learning, further research. And as communications professionals, we should all remember that we're defenders of our organization's reputation and brand. And we should, as Alex said, make use of the social listening and sentiment analysis, right, to get value for our organizations. Two things I would like everyone to just take away is that there are social media monitoring tools, but AI has then been integrated in these tools. So we should feel free to embrace AI and train our AIs, right? Train them like our pets, right? So that way they can then have the human context to it, and they should be able to give us real-time value, right? That we could then share with our organizations. A second thing I would like us to do is imbibe the culture of listening to red flags in real time, right? And be prepared to respond to those red flags in real time too, right? Because as Bodam said, those risks will emerge. And when they emerge, how would you respond, right? So social listening and sentiment analysis is not just about awareness, it's about being prepared, and it's about taking decisive action when the time emerges. So thank you. And I believe that we will continue with this learning going forward, and we will scratch and do more research and improve our profession by and large. So back to you, Demi. Thanks all.
Thank you so much. Ewa says we should be defenders of our brand. Reminds me of Defender of the Universe. So embrace AI, train it. You can train it to your advantage. It's not taking away your job. Alex has reassured us of that, but you can use it to be a better professional. Thank you for the reminder, Ewa. So over to you, Bodam. Final thoughts, please.
I'm just going to build on what Alex and Iwo have said. We know that in today's world, perception is not a side conversation. It's really our strategy. So social listening, sentiment analysis aren't just tools for PR, but they're a compass for leadership. They really help us understand not just what our consumers are saying, but what they feel, what they fear, and what they're fighting for. We know that we're in a time and in an age where one tweet, as we've seen in the examples earlier, can spark a boycott, when a comment can spark a movement. So listening is not optional, it's essential. But to also remember that listening without integrity is surveillance. Strategy without empathy is just a PR spin. So we must begin to build systems that are not just tech-driven, but are ethically sound, that are culturally intelligent, and that are locally relevant and rooted in culture. The goal is not to manipulate the perception of your brands. The goal is to lead with truth, to lead with transparency, and to lead with trust. So whether it is that you're managing a crisis, you're launching a product, you're rebuilding public trust, I want to encourage us all to start by listening. And then after that, to act in a way that's bold, that's respectful, and in a way that's repeated. Because in the end, the brands that really thrive are not the loudest brands, they're not the biggest brands, but they're the ones that know how to listen, how to learn, how to evolve, and then how to lead with wisdom. I hope you found today's conversation valuable. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, I did. I'm sure that everyone else did as well. Someone's asking about the recording. It will be available on the YouTube channel. The IABC West Africa Group has a YouTube channel, and you can find this recording as well as other our previous conversations. And it's a great learning tool for everyone, not just communication professionals, business leaders, business advisors. Everyone can find relevance and value from today's session. So thank you so much, our very esteemed panelists, for being here with us today. And to our audience, thank you for being very engaging. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your thoughts. And thank you for sharing your time with us, your evening, your very valuable time. Thank you. And this is to especially recognize our IABC colleagues from across the globe who are also part of this conversation. Thank you for joining. And if you wanted to connect with any of our panelists, their names are still up here. Feel free to do so on LinkedIn, as long as you're not surveilling. I'm sure they'll be fine with that. If you had other questions and you like their input, I think you may reach out to them. You may reach out to them on social media. But thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate your time, and we very much appreciate your engagement. If you're still wondering why you should be a part of the IABC, I'm sure you are motivated by this. we're not just communication professionals, we are communication professionals with a difference. We're making strategic inputs to your businesses. We're not just winging it, like we like to say in the West African group. We are leading with knowledge, and that's what separates us from the rest of the crop. So, if you like to build your competence, if you like to prove your expertise, please do consider joining the IABC, not just for yourself, but for your business advantage. So, once again, my name is Damilola Kadiri. It's been a pleasure being your moderator today, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thank you. Bye now.